Hi, everyone. My name is Erin Williamson. I am a 3L legal intern with the Institute for Intellectual Property and Social Justice. Today, I have the pleasure of sitting down with Jennifer Hayes. Jennifer is the head of Jordan IP Law's Pharmaceutical, Biotechnological, Life Sciences, Chemical, and Material Practices groups. Early in her career, Jennifer was a registered pharmacist in the state of Maryland. After obtaining her law degree from Howard University Law School, Jennifer worked for an intellectual property law boutique firm in Washington, D.C. She has also worked for the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office as a patent examiner for the chemicals and materials patents. And Jennifer has traveled extensively through Europe and Asia to visit clients and give lectures on topics relating to U.S. patent law. Jennifer, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Well, thank you, Erin. It's my privilege to have been invited.
You. So I want to start kind of with your educational background. What made you choose to study pharmacy at Howard?
Oh wow, this is a kind of a story. I'm a second generation pharmacist. My father was a pharmacist, but I did not really intend to go to pharmacy school when I came to Howard. I actually came to Howard undecided, pretty much trying not to go to pharmacy school, but I guess it was just really kind of in my blood and DNA, and eventually that's just where I ended up.
So you got this pharmacy degree. You worked in pharmacy for a little bit. What made you kind of make that decision to go to law school?
Well, actually, again, it goes back to the fact that my father was a pharmacist, and I grew up, around his pharmacy, which was a community pharmacy. Back when, you would go to the general community pharmacist down the street, everybody called him Doc. He knew everybody, they knew everybody, and it just wasn't the same working in retail pharmacy at the time that I was working. Because when I was in school, I started working as a technician at Giant, local retail, big retail pharmacy at the time. And I stayed with Giant for several years, but again, it was just a different atmosphere from what I had grown up with, and just really didn't see myself that is something that I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I love pharmacy, and I like the science part of it, and I really didn't see the same type of interaction with the public and with the community that I had seen in my dad's pharmacy, and so I just started looking for something else. So I actually decided when I was in my last school of pharmacy school, to go to law school. And my mother's a lawyer. So people always say, oh, so you just did what your parents did. And maybe I did, but I really did. I never intended to do that. It didn't. That is the fact that I ended up doing it that way, but it was never my intention.
Awesome. So what made you choose Howard? Why go back to the same place you got the pharmacy degree?
So, well, that's all just a matter of logistics. I was in DC at the time. I had gotten engaged. My husband wanted to stay my fiance at the time wanted to stay in the DC area. And in terms of the schools I applied to, and the ones I was really deciding between were Ohio State, means I go back towards home. I'm originally from Toledo, Ohio, not Columbus, but close to home. Howard, and Catholic. And I had actually kind of settled on Catholic. I'm like, I've already been to Howard. I'm going to go to Catholic. But then my mother said to me, I had gotten a full scholarship from Howard's Law School.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, that doesn't make any sense for you to go and pay to go to school somewhere else when somebody's going to pay you to go there. And it kind of was like, yeah, I guess that's right. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense just because I've been to Howard before. So that's how I ended up going to Howard's Law School. But Howard's Law School is very prestigious.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very, and again, logistics wise, here in DC area, they're all on the kind of, you've got a lot of great law schools. You've got GW, you've got, what's the one I'm thinking of? It's went out of my head, but Catholic, Howard. I'm thinking of Georgetown, not GW. Yeah, so it's a lot of really good law schools, and so you can actually, in American, there's also another one. You can actually take advantage of all of them in a sense if you go to school in any one of them. So I kind of settled in on Howard because of the scholarship offer.
Awesome. And you did end up going to get an LLM. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So I had been working as a pharmacist, and I was switching over into patent law as a field. And I wasn't getting a lot of great offers, if any at all, in the whole patent side of it. And part of that I kind of felt was because Howard was not quote unquote known as an intellectual property school. Like, back then there was, what was the name of it? They changed the name now. I think it's like New Hampshire or something, but it used to be Franklin Pierce or whatever. That's like an intellectual property school. Like GW has a really, really strong patent and IP track. But Howard is more known for social justice, civil rights and those kinds of things for lawyers. So I wasn't really getting a lot of, great offers. So it just so happened that at the time I was working at the patent office and they offered, pay for classes related to your job. And I was working as a patent examiner. And so I started taking a class or two at GW under the program and ended up then just going ahead and signing up for the LLM program there. And I eventually left the patent office and started working at a law firm, which actually was like right around the corner from the law school. So it all worked out really well.
Could you tell us
Yep.
a little bit about your law firm experience and that you've worked at law firms, you've worked at the US Patent Office, kind of what was your experience doing those different types of jobs and those different roles?
I actually like them all and for different reasons. Obviously, every job has its pros and cons.
Mhm.
Working at the patent office, that's what they call quote unquote a good government job. I guess back in those days, you kind of had a steady schedule. You had a steady, what you had to do when you had to do it. But one thing was in terms of the work broadness of the work. Scientifically, you were like given a what they call a class, and you did patents and you examined things in that class only. And I wanted to do more. There's a whole lot more to intellectual property rather than just like one class. And so that was the benefit of the law firm.
Mhm.
The law firm, the con of a law firm can be the billable hours, and maybe you work a whole lot more than you might want to. That's not always the case. I think patent law and particularly prosecution is one of the fields that lends to, having a better life balance. I'm not saying it's great, but it's better than like maybe being a litigator.
Mhm.
But it gave me an opportunity to do more. Like in terms of my background was pharmaceutical, I did polymer science at the patent office, and I could do opinions and other things rather than just strictly examining cases that were in this one particular technical area, which was like laminated articles.
Mhm.
And so I was able to use like more of my scientific background in a broader sense in the law firm because there were so many more opportunities and different types of projects.
Awesome. Are there any skills you kind of think that you've gained that have factored into your success to bring you where you are today?
Definitely writing. Writing is a very very it's a core for everything that we do in the terms of the patent law, and pretty much obviously a lot of somewhat argumentative type writing because I'm usually advocating for my client and saying why somebody else is wrong.
Mhm.
So that kind of that is definitely a skill. I tend to I know I've learned over the years that I have a tendency to run on because I write like I talk.
Mhm.
I know I have to go back after I write it and actually go back and do punctuation correctly.
Were there any like classes you took or anything that kind of helped you develop that writing skill and kind of pick it up on?
Definitely legal writing,
Mhm.
also technical writing because the two are a little bit different. So you have to be when I'm writing an opinion, I'm writing it more on a legal writing type thing. If I'm writing a patent application, I'm writing it more from a technical standpoint.
Mhm.
So those two things, and knowing the difference and knowing that you have to use, that you have to be able to, write for this audience in this way and write for that audience in the other way. That's a very, very important distinction and skill that I have gained over the years. Classes, I mean, obviously all of my science classes are, our basis and foundation for being able to actually read and understand a patent and being able to discuss and talk with the scientists and understand what it is that is patentable and explain to them the difference between something that's patentable and innovative versus something that's really not so innovative and maybe we need to focus on something different or maybe even have them go back and say well can you develop this more so being able that scientific background really helps with that but legally the writing I think is probably the most important thing.
So you mentioned like run-on sentences or something that you do frequently. Are there any other challenges that you've kind of found and faced in your career that have really impacted how you do your job and how you apply yourself every day?
Well, there's always the impact of racism and socialism and classism and feminism, sexism, all those kinds of things as an African American woman that I've had to face. I think of some of that even was in the fact that I didn't get a lot of even in interviewing. When they come to the schools, a lot of the patent firms just didn't come to Howard because there weren't quote unquote, supposedly people who were able to do patent work, but that was then. Things have changed significantly, especially with the IIPSJ and the efforts that have been made over the past, I'll say 10 to 15 years to improve Howard's, IP track. So that has improved, and I'm very, very happy about that because it was a burden. I think at the time I was actually told in the patent and trademark class that they weren't going to do the patent part because there wasn't anyone that could be a patent attorney because you have to have a certain science background. And yeah, most of the people who do go to, at the time back then, like I said, it was not known necessarily. Most people aren't coming to Howard with science backgrounds. However, that, the fact that that I was there, and there were probably at least 3 or 4 other people in my class who did have science backgrounds, who could have, and may have been interested in learning more about patents to think about possibly broadening or possibly going into the area. So I found it, so I was very, very happy to see that they had expanded those things. But in terms of applying it into my practice, not really. I mean, basically, I do the best that I can with everything that I get when I get it. And I just try to put my best foot forward, where it is. And so to basically try to dispel anything about the fact, from what school I come from, or, whether I'm a female or a male or whatever, the basis is that I have the experience, I have the knowledge, and I have the ability. And that's usually what I'm trying to convey when I'm doing something.
Is there any advice that you can give to people that are also kind of facing those diversity and inclusion barriers to overcoming them? You've been so successful that I'm sure you have a nugget you could share.
Well, I don't know about being successful. I think one thing is to always try to make sure that you're included and try to include yourself. Don't exclude yourself, because there's going to be enough exclusion. So when there is an opportunity, you want to take advantage of it. You want to ask for those opportunities that if you see other people are getting opportunities and you think you should, you can be a part of it. You want to make sure that you ask for them. You want to say, hey, I'd like to do this, or hey, I hear we got this coming in and I'd like to, be on it. You want to make it known that you want to do these things. You also have to show up and be ready to work and show that you can do good work and work well with other people, so that, the next time around, they're like, oh, well, hey, she said she was interested in this. She did a good job on that one. And so that's pretty much what has happened. Like, every once in a while you'll find 1 or 2 people. Everybody may not be on board, but if you find that one person or a person who will be on board, and then you do a good job with them, and then they'll start telling everybody else, and everybody else will say, okay, I'll give her a chance or give her a try. And then you go from there. And that's pretty much the only thing I can say is, don't exclude yourself. Always ask and make your interests known, and try to be available when the opportunities come around.
Awesome. Is there there's this whole conversation right now of the USPTO becoming more inclusive and changing their programs to be more diverse. Is there anything you'd like to see kind of incorporated into these larger organizations or firms to be more inclusive and diverse?
Well, the USPTO and the firms are somewhat different. For instance, USPTO, they're somewhat diverse, but at the examining levels. Mm-hmm. So like your higher up levels, the executive, the management, solicitor's office, those, the directors or whatever, they may have had a female or 2, but they haven't always had. They have had some African Americans, but they could just do better generally at the higher levels. In terms of law firms, that's a whole big thing, because there's a whole weeding out thing where they, try to almost, if you get in at as a 1L, mm-hmm. by the time you're 2 or 3L, you're so frustrated because you can't, get the kind of work that that you see other people getting, or, you're constantly being, extremely, what's the word I want to use? Criticized, but that's not the word I want to use. But you see, it tends A and B make the same mistake, but B gets more flack from it than A. A is just like, oh, well, just fix that. And B is like, why did you do this? But, you get this, those kinds of things get frustrating, and you end up having people just I don't want to deal with it, and going on about their way. Or, and a lot of that comes down to opportunities for work. When the opportunities come in, you have to basically, give people the opportunity to work on the big projects, to work on the projects that are going to make a difference. as opposed to always giving them, just the little crumbs and then saying, well, they haven't done anything, significant, when you know that there's nothing that they could have done significant because it was never offered to them at any point in time. So I think a lot of things we have to do in terms of diversity have to do with starting out earlier and trying to recruit African Americans, minorities from technical associations, from the law schools. And once you bring them in, actually mentoring them and actually giving them, significant work and work projects for them. So they can really show, so they can actually learn and grow and show you what they can do.
Right. And so you mentioned mentorship. Did you have a particular role model when you were growing up that kind of set the stage for you to put your foot in the door and take that seat at the table?
Probably my mother, my father as well. Actually, a lot of my family members, but most likely my mother's probably the most prominent. Like I said, she was a lawyer and kind of a no nonsense type person. So she kind of raised us in the same vein. And I think that's probably where a lot of it comes from. And my father as well, he was first generation pharmacist, and he faced a lot of obstacles, but he just went ahead and he did what he felt was necessary for the community and for his family. And so those kinds of just dedication, consistency, and just actually just going for it, not really taking no for an answer. Sometimes people will tell you no, and you just have to find another way.
Great. So going back to your job, you currently work for Jordan IP. Is there anything in particular you can pick out as your favorite aspect of working for that firm and the current roles that you're in?
Well, as you mentioned, I'm like head of like all the chemical type groups. I came to Jordan IP and they didn't really have a chemical practice. So this was very, very something very, very new for me. And it was it was actually very daunting. I'm like, will I be able to actually, bring in clients, on my own? I had previously had, some small clients at my previous firm, lots of interactions with some of our bigger clients, but, and then actually even some managerial positions with some of our bigger clients where I actually managed the client work, but that wasn't necessarily my client. But then there were a lot of times when there were conflict issues where other clients that I was trying to bring in because of conflict issues, I wasn't able to go ahead and successfully bring them on board. So there's always that question of now will they come on board now that I'm somewhere else? And then getting used to a whole new firm and a whole new way of doing things. So it was really pretty daunting, but I'm glad it was a good move for me. And I'm glad that I was able to do it. I work with great people. And it's like the experience of actually growing something is it's a good and rewarding experience. It's good to be able to bring in clients and then, hire attorneys, to give somebody else, who's doing a job and be able to give work to them and have them be able to do, and then have more clients come. So that's been, it's what lawyers, I think, especially if you've ever been in a firm, that's what we all are out here to try to do. So to actually be able to be in that position and, when you get the first one and the second one and you're like, wow, and then you get 3 or 4 more and it's like, oh, okay. And then you're like, okay, wait a minute, who's going to do this work? Like, okay, wait, we need to hire somebody. So yeah, all the managerial things that we do, all the marketing things, we're kind of like jacks of all trades because we are doing a little bit of everything, but it's good. I think because, we have that hands-on and we have that one-on-one and we have some say in the matter. Whereas before it was kind of just like, if you had to get certain people on board to be able to do something, and then you had to go through the whole lot of politics. We're much smaller. So our politics situation is not as complicated as it can be at a medium to large size firm.
Are there any practice areas that you guys are kind of hoping to grow into or have started growing into that you're particularly excited about?
For me, the pharmaceutical area. I have maybe 2 very, very small pharmaceutical clients. But that's my, like, I do a lot of chemical work and I do a lot of material science because of my background from the patent office and because of my chemistry, studies. And I like doing that, but I really, really like doing the pharmaceutical work because that's really where my I don't know, would you say I guess my entry into the whole science thing was, for me, was pharmaceutical work.
Mhm.
I like small compounds. I like, method, how to do them, how to make them, and all those kinds of things. That's really what I like to do, in different formulations, and seeing how a compound can be modified slightly that would almost give it a whole new use. Those kinds of things are exciting to me. So seeing that area grow is the best thing is right now for me.
Awesome. That's super exciting. I'm really excited for you. Um, Going back to law school, is there any advice that you wish that you kind of had, or when you were in school, is there anything you've learned that you wish you would have known back when you were getting your degree?
I think taking advantage of more of the things that, like you see all, like now it seems like, I don't know if it seems like there's more opportunities or if I just didn't know about them.
Mhm.
There's all kinds of different opportunities for internships, for externships, for working with people who are actually in the industry or in the field, and those kinds of opportunities, and taking advantage of that is really, really important. Opportunities for the competitions, like writing competitions or this, that, and the other. I mean, I think we all are also busy trying to get through the classes and get our grades that sometimes we get so focused on that and we end up kind of somewhat missing some of those things. But if it's possible and you can look for those other kinds of things outside of the regular, you know, um, rigmarole of, study and take a test and, trying to get the best grade you can. Sure, obviously you need that. That's important because everybody's looking at rank and they're looking at, top percentage. And I wish that they didn't do that. I wish that they went more by work product, right? They went more by what people's, capabilities are, than more so whether or not they got a 99 and somebody else got a 98. Because, who knows, the person who got the 98 might have been working 50 hours a week while the person who got the 99 is doing nothing but studying, and so there's a difference. So I just wish that I could have taken more advantage of those other opportunities. And I think that for law students now, if you have the opportunity to take something outside, the volunteer things, those kinds of things that are going to get you involved in practice, it not only will help you with your skills, but it'll also help you decide what you really, really want to do. Because you may have something you've been thinking, oh, this is what I want to do. And you start doing it and you think, oh, this is not at all for me. And that'll give you the time to start redirecting before it can maybe possibly be too late.
Is there any advice that you would give like a young law student or even a young attorney that wants to get into the IP sector and is kind of nervous to do it? It seems daunting for myself. I have an entertainment background and I was always told, oh, if you don't have a science background, this isn't for you. And I was kind of scared when I started law school.
Well, so if you want to be a patent attorney, you need to be
Right.
a science background. But if you want to be, if you know, entertainment, and which has a lot of copyright, trademark issues, a lot of a lot of IP issues there, then that's perfect. That's a great background to have. And so there's nothing wrong with that. So that would be my only thing I would tell somebody who's interested in IP, is to really, really know and understand where you are. Like, for instance, if you're in if you're an electrical engineer, that's a really, really high demand field right now. You can probably get a job anywhere.
Mhm.
In terms of whether or not you have an advanced degree, that's even better. And specifically, if it's a life science, if you have an advanced degree, like almost like a PhD, almost a PhD, to be honest with you. If you can get your PhD before you go to law school, I would say do that, only because that's the end degree. There's a terminal degree. There's nothing higher than your PhD. And then there's no way anybody would ever tell you, well, you don't have the background, because they can't tell you that when you've gotten the highest degree that there is. And then so I know it sounds like a lot, and that's another part of the problem. It's the idea that you got to go to undergrad for 4 years, and then possibly, master's and or PhD could be another 2 to 5, maybe even 7 more years, and then a law school for 3 years to 4 years if you decide to do. It sounds a lot. It's very daunting, and it is. But if it's something that you have a desire and a passion for, is unfortunately kind of where you have to go. I lucked into it because I just went to pharmacy school, and my mother, the lawyer,
Mhm.
me, you could be a patent attorney. And I was like, well, what is that? And she says, well, it requires a science degree and you have one. So you should look into it. So I did. So that's kind of how I lucked into it. Had my mother not told me about it, I probably would have. I was interested in food and drug law. maybe product law, and type of litigation or whatever. But I really, really enjoy patent law. I'm glad it was, I'm glad probably one of the few times I listened to my mother. Well, there are a few times I listened to her, and this was one of the good ones.
It's always something we can do more is listen to our mothers.
Yes, yes, that's more advice I'd give to any law student, young adult. You still need to listen to your parents. And it's, I have young adult children, and it is amazing to me how they'll listen to so many people. And and they'll say this a lot of times, they'll tell them the same thing I'm telling them, but they don't listen to me when I say it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I am your mother. I'm not telling you things to harm you. Like, what in the world?
We don't want to hear it from the people closest to us.
No, and it's amazing to me how that kind of works out. Now, especially now that I see it, from your mother. I just had my youngest graduate college, and she's now trying to decide what she wants to do. And I'll give her a whole bunch of different things. You can look into this, look into this, look into this. And she's like, I don't want to do that. You don't even know what it is, but okay.
I tried.
They want to find their own way, and I get it. And eventually I'm sure she will. And so that's why I'm kind of like, okay. She's also been working really, really hard for a long, 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 long time. So I'm kind of like, she's got some time, take some time to figure out what you really want to do, what your next step is going to be.
Awesome. So you've done a lot of going abroad. You've gone to Europe, you've gone to Asia. Can you tell us a little bit about those talks that you've given and what kind of drove you to go abroad and do that?
Well, client interaction is always very good, and you want to make sure that you continue to do that. So a lot of times clients will ask, they'll say, can you tell us about this in terms of U.S. law, and they want to find out. And the same thing for us, because a lot of times they're very, very sophisticated and they do know a lot about U.S. law, but they still need a U.S. patent attorney to do the work on the U.S. side, as well as we need like a European attorney or Asian attorney to do anything in those countries. So talks I would give would just be, a lot of times it might be some case law updates or change in law. Like a while back, they changed the patent law. And so that brought about a lot of talks because we needed to explain to our clients how it was going to affect them and how it's going to affect, their application statuses and, filing of applications and those kinds of things. So a lot of times it's basically just updating them on U.S. law, whether it's procedural or whether it's case law or those kinds of things, just, keeping them abreast. And the thing, I value that time to travel is if you ever get opportunities to travel, I would say take them because, you learn a lot more when you see a lot more besides what you see here in the U.S. Most people in other countries can speak English, even though we rarely speak anything else. So that is something that I've always admired, to go somewhere else. I know sometimes I often had people with me that were very fluent in both languages, but in the times when I've had to travel by myself and especially like in Japan, because I don't speak Japanese and they speak better English than I do probably. So those were always interesting times and times to learn. And I also explore the culture. Mm-hmm. I had opportunities to go and visit. I saw Mount Fuji, which was really cool, and times to visit, like the old castle, oldest castles and things that they had over there. So it's all a learning experience when you're able to travel.
Awesome. Is there anywhere that you would love to go back to? You could just take off and leave for a while.
Well, I have quite a few places I've never made it to, like Korea is one, Germany is one. I want to go to Russia as well. I had one of my colleagues who was a Russian American, and she and I were making a plan. She was actually a computer science, a patent attorney. I'm pharmaceutical, but we were trying to make a plan for us to both go to Russia so that so we could pitch some clients over there. Never got around to making it happen, but we had a good idea, I think. And then she would also, we also started a plan where she would teach me Russian phrases. So I find that to be, we had some other people from Korea and Japan, China I went to China as well, in our office. And so I would often learn different things, just good morning, hello, thank you, those kinds of things. And so I learned, and I'd walk through the office, and if I saw somebody, and I'd try my, whatever new phrase I learned on them. So that was kind of fun. Yeah.
So besides traveling, is there anything that you consider your hobby outside of the legal world? Is there something you do to unwind at night?
Oh, wow. For me, probably karaoke.
Okay.
Before COVID, that was my things, like, where's the karaoke tonight? It was like, that's what I like to do to unwind. Um, I work with a lot of social organizations, community service organizations, and actually working with my children on starting a foundation that we want to, a 501c3 that we want to be able to help other people. So I do that. I don't know if I would call that unwinding per se, but the karaoke thing is probably my way to unwind. And that I haven't done any karaoke though since 2020. But I had an opportunity to do real karaoke in Japan, so that was really kind of cool.
Is there like a go-to karaoke song for you? Is there like one that you're definitely going to do?
Whitney Houston is either, I think, I Want to Dance with Somebody is one of my favorites.
Okay. That's a good one. Awesome. And then, so you mentioned the 501c3. Do you have any like nuggets you want to share about that? Is that still under construction? Still under
construction? Still under construction. Once I get more details, I'll let you know.
Awesome.
But it's still under construction.
Well, that sounds fantastic. And thank you so much for doing this today. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.